They made us laugh. They made us cry. They filled our living rooms with joy night after night. You grew up watching them. You knew their faces. You quoted their jokes to your friends. But behind closed doors, behind the makeup and the stage lights, many of the biggest sitcom stars in television history were fighting battles that no one knew about. Depression that ran so deep it felt like drowning. Anxiety that paralyzed them. Addiction that consumed them. Bipolar disorder that made them feel like two different people. These were the silent demons that plagued some of the most talented entertainers and in many cases, these battles ended in tragedy. Suicide, overdoses, deaths shrouded in mystery and confusion. These are 20 sitcom stars who secretly struggled with mental illness, often in complete silence, until their silent suffering became unbearable. Their families kept the details private. Their doctors maintained confidentiality. The world was left to wonder why these bright, talented people had simply gone away. But the truth was far darker than anyone realized. These were people who had everything: fame, money, success, the admiration of millions. And yet they were drowning in invisible pain that no amount of applause could fix. They couldn't escape their own minds. No amount of laughter from an audience could quiet the voices in their heads. Today, we're telling their stories, honoring their memory, lifting the veil on the mental health crisis that has destroyed Hollywood from the inside out. 1. Robin Williams. Robin Williams was more than just an entertainer. He was a force of nature, a comedic genius who could make people laugh at a level that few others could achieve. His rapid-fire humor, his ability to shift between characters and voices in seconds, made him seem invincible. He played the alien Mork on Mork and Mindy, a character so free-spirited and joyful that audiences couldn't help but love him. But behind that infectious energy was a man struggling with profound depression. For decades, Williams battled depression in silence. He spoke openly later about his battles with alcohol and cocaine addiction, using substances to self-medicate his pain. In the early 2010s, his mental health deteriorated further. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, or so he thought. But the real culprit was Lewy body dementia, a disease that destroys the brain even more cruelly than Parkinson's. It stole his memory. It filled him with paranoia. It made him unrecognizable to himself. On August 11, 2014, at age 63, Williams took his own life. His wife later revealed the extent of his suffering, describing it as a monster that had consumed him entirely. 2. John Ritter. John Ritter made people laugh with his physical comedy and his infectious energy. As Jack Tripper on Three's Company, he performed stunts that seemed impossible, taking falls and making faces that had audiences in stitches. But Ritter's life was far more complicated than his comedic personas suggested. He struggled with anxiety and depression throughout his career. The pressure to always be funny, to always deliver laughs, took a psychological toll. In September 2003, while filming 8 Simple Rules, Ritter suddenly fell ill. He was rushed to the hospital with what appeared to be a heart attack, but it was something far more serious. His aorta was tearing, an aortic dissection that doctors initially missed. But the stress and anxiety he had been carrying for years may have contributed to his deteriorating health. At age 54, John Ritter was gone. His sudden death shocked the world and left questions about how much his mental and emotional struggles had affected his physical health. His wife spent years raising awareness about the warning signs he had ignored. 3. Freddie Prinze Sr. Freddie Prinze Sr. was a rising star, the charismatic lead of Chico and the Man. He was handsome, talented, and seemingly on top of the world. His chemistry with co-star Jack Albertson was electric and audiences loved him. But Prinze was battling severe depression and substance abuse. He was using cocaine regularly and drinking heavily. By the late 1970s, his personal life was in chaos. His marriage was falling apart. He was facing financial pressures despite his television success. He felt trapped and hopeless. On January 29, 1977, at just 22 years old, Freddie Prinze shot himself in the head. he left a suicide note, revealing his state of mind in his final moments. His death was a shocking reminder that youth, talent, and success offered no protection against depression and suicidal thoughts. Prince's son later became an actor himself and has spoken about growing up without his father and understanding the depths of his father's mental health crisis. 4. Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman was unlike any actor on television. His deadpan delivery and his willingness to confuse and disturb audiences made him brilliant. On Taxi, he played Latka Gravas, a mechanic with an accent and a strange way of looking at the world. Kaufman created the character to be intentionally off-putting to mainstream audiences. But off-screen, Kaufman was deeply troubled. He struggled with anxiety and depression. He was obsessed with control and often became extremely difficult to work with on set. His personality was unpredictable. Some who worked with him said he was kind and generous. Others said he was cold and manipulative. By the mid-1980s, Kaufman was diagnosed with cancer. He kept diagnosis secret even from many of his closest friends and family members. He refused traditional treatment, believing he could will himself to health. Instead, his mental state deteriorated as his physical condition worsened. In May 1984, at age 35, Andy Kaufman died. His refusal to face his illness head-on and his deep psychological struggles left him isolated and unable to seek the help he desperately needed. Chris Farley burst onto Saturday Night Live as an over-the-top, physically comedic force. His loud voice, his wild energy, and his willingness to humiliate himself for laughs made him a star. Everyone loved him. His characters like Matt Foley, the motivational speaker living in a van down by the river, became iconic. But Farley was deeply insecure. Behind the loud persona was a man desperate for approval and validation. He struggled with substance abuse throughout his career, using cocaine and alcohol to cope with his depression and anxiety. He was also dealing with the pressure of living up to expectations, of always being the funniest person in the room. By the late 1990s, his mental health was deteriorating. He was in and out of rehabilitation facilities. He lost roles because of his unreliability. On December 18, 1997, at age 33, Chris Farley died from an overdose. The official cause was cocaine intoxication combined with morphine. His death shocked the comedy world. He left behind a legacy of laughter, but also a cautionary tale about the dangers of depression and addiction in high-pressure entertainment environments. 6. Phil Hartman. Phil Hartman was brilliant. His versatility on Saturday Night Live and later on news radio showcased his range as an actor and comedian. He could play dramatic scenes with genuine emotion. He could be hilarious without relying on pratfalls. He was one of the most respected performers in television. But Hartman was battling depression and substance abuse. He drank heavily, sometimes showing up to work intoxicated. His marriage to Brynn was volatile and filled with conflict. They argued frequently. They drank together. Their relationship was becoming increasingly toxic. On May 28, 1998, while Hartman was sleeping, his wife Brynn shot him multiple times. She was drunk and they had been arguing. After shooting him, she called 911 and confessed. Hartman was rushed to the hospital but died from his injuries. He was 49 years old. His death revealed the extent of his personal struggles and his wife's own mental health crisis. It was a tragic reminder that untreated depression and substance abuse can destroy families. 7. Dana Plato. Dana Plato was beloved as Kimberly Drummond on Different Strokes. She was beautiful, talented, seemed destined for a long and successful career. But when the show ended, everything fell apart. The industry moved on without her. She couldn't find meaningful work. She struggled with depression and substance abuse. She lost her home. She lost her financial security. The childhood star who had made millions was living in poverty and desperation. She attempted various comebacks, including posing for Playboy and appearing on reality television, but nothing worked. Her mental health deteriorated. By the late 1990s, she was suicidal. On May 8, 1999, Dana Plato was found dead in her car at a motel in Oklahoma. The official cause was an overdose, though some details remained unclear about whether it was intentional or accidental. She was 34 years old. Her death highlighted the mental health crisis among former child actors and the lack of support systems for performers whose careers had ended. 8. Murphy. Brittany Murphy had infectious energy. As the voice of Luan on King of the Hill, she brought bubbly humor to the animated series. But she was also a film star, appearing in movies like Clueless and 8 Mile. She seemed to have it all, but Murphy was battling severe anxiety and what appeared to be eating disorders. She was often abnormally thin. She spoke in interviews about the pressure to maintain a certain appearance in Hollywood. Her marriage to screenwriter Simon Monjack was controversial. Friends expressed concern that he was controlling and manipulating her. Her mental health spiraled. She became isolated. In December 2009, she collapsed at her home and was rushed to the hospital. She died from pneumonia complicated by iron deficiency anemia and medication complications. She was only 32 years old. Her death was followed just months later by her husband's death under similar circumstances, adding another layer of mystery and tragedy to the story. Her mental health struggles remained largely private until after her death. 9. David Lander. David Lander made people laugh as Squiggy on Laverne and Shirley. His silly voice and physical comedy made the show unforgettable. But in the 1980s, Lander was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a degenerative disease that slowly destroys the nervous system. He kept the diagnosis secret for years, afraid that revealing it would end his career. He continued acting despite increasing physical limitations. He suffered from depression related to his illness, watching his body slowly fail him. For years, he hid the disease from colleagues and the public, a burden he carried alone. Eventually, he did go public with his diagnosis and became an advocate for MS awareness. But the emotional toll of hiding his condition and living with depression related to his illness took its toll on his mental health. In December 2020, at age 73, David Lander died from complications related to his MS. His death highlighted the mental health struggles of performers dealing with chronic illnesses. 10. Gary Coleman. Gary Coleman was the star of Different Strokes. His adorable face and impeccable timing made him a household name. But as he grew older, his career dried up. He struggled to find work as an adult actor. He faced legal battles with his parents over his earnings. He was broke despite having made millions. The child star was living in poverty and desperation. Coleman battled depression throughout his life. He attempted suicide multiple times. He was arrested for assault on multiple occasions. He worked as a security guard just to pay his bills. His mental health deteriorated as his circumstances became increasingly dire. In May 2010, Coleman died of complications from a stroke at age 42. His death came after years of struggling with depression, financial ruin, the psychological impact of childhood fame, followed by complete rejection by the industry. 11. Leif Garrett, Al Plus Health Plus interview. Dewey Leif Garrett was a teenage heartthrob in the late 1970s. His good looks and talent made him an idol for millions of young people. But Garrett had serious issues lurking beneath the surface. In 1979, at age 17, he drove while under the influence and caused a serious accident. His best friend was paralyzed by the crash. The guilt and trauma from that accident haunted Garrett for the rest of his life. He spiraled into drug addiction as a way to cope with his guilt and depression. He was arrested multiple times for cocaine possession. His life became defined by his struggle with substance abuse and mental health issues. He spent periods homeless, living on the streets. He attempted multiple recovery efforts, but continued to relapse. Garrett became a cautionary tale about early fame and the dangers of untreated trauma and addiction. While he is still alive, his decades-long battle with depression and addiction have left him a shadow of his former self. If you're finding these stories valuable and you want to see more content exposing the untold struggles of entertainment figures. Leave a 1 in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell so you don't miss future videos. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories. Now, let's continue with the rest of these tragic stories. 12. Richard Mulligan. Richard Mulligan was a talented character actor, best known for playing Dr. Harry Weston on Empty Nest. He won an Emmy for his performance on that show. But behind the scenes, Mulligan was struggling with depression. He had endured multiple failed marriages. He dealt with financial instability despite his television success. By the late 1990s, he was diagnosed with cancer. The disease spread rapidly. His depression deepened as his physical health declined. He withdrew from public life. December 2000, at age 67, Richard Mulligan died from cancer. But the depression and emotional struggles he had carried throughout his life had taken a significant toll. Those close to him said his mental health battles had made the final years of his life increasingly isolated and difficult. His death ended a promising career cut short by illness and untreated depression. 13. Glenn Quinn. Glenn Quinn was charming as Mark Healy on Roseanne. He brought a bad boy energy to the character that audiences loved. But Quinn was battling a severe heroin addiction. His substance abuse began early in his career and spiraled out of control. He lost roles because of his unreliability. He was unable to maintain stable employment. His friends, including his Roseanne co-stars, tried to help him get clean, but Quinn refused assistance. He lived on friends' couches, unable to afford his own place. His mental health deteriorated as his addiction deepened. On December 3, 2002, Glenn Quinn was found dead on a friend's couch in North Hollywood. He had died from a heroin overdose. He was 32 years old. His death was quiet and lonely, far from the spotlight he had once commanded. It highlighted the invisible epidemic of addiction and depression among television actors. 14. Robert Pastorelli. Robert Pastorelli played the quirky house painter Eldon Burndy on Murphy Brown. His character was beloved, offering odd wisdom while painting the walls of the main character's townhouse. Pastorelli's performance made what could have been a minor role into something central and beloved. But off-screen, Pastorelli was battling a severe heroin addiction. His personal life was chaotic and filled with tragedy. In 1999, his girlfriend was found dead in their home from a gunshot wound. The case was ruled ambiguous. Pastorelli was named a person of interest in the investigation. He maintained his innocence, but the scrutiny and pressure were immense. The investigation remained open, adding to his psychological burden. On March 8, 2004, Robert Pastorelli was found dead in his Hollywood Hills home. He had died from a fatal overdose of opiates. He was 49 years old. His death came as the investigation into his girlfriend's death continued, leaving both cases shrouded in questions and tragedy. 15. Tony Slattery. Tony Slattery made audiences laugh as a cast member on Whose Line Is It? Anyway, his quick wit and sharp humor were undeniable. But behind the comedy was a man battling bipolar disorder. For years, Slattery struggled with the highs and lows of his mental illness. The highs of fame were intoxicating. The lows were crushing. He turned to alcohol and other substances to manage his symptoms. His addiction and mental health issues spiraled throughout the 2000s and 2010s. He became increasingly isolated. He spent time homeless. He was arrested multiple times. By the 2020s, Slattery had become more open about his mental health struggles. He spoke publicly about his bipolar disorder and his battle with addiction. But the years of suffering had taken a toll. In January 2025, at age 65, Tony Slattery passed away. His death highlighted the long-term consequences of bipolar disorder and addiction when left untreated and unmanaged. 16. David Cassidy was a teenage superstar as Keith Partridge on The Partridge Family. But behind the music and the fame was a man struggling with depression and bipolar disorder. Cassidy battled substance abuse throughout his adult life. He was arrested multiple times for DUI and drug possession. He struggled to maintain stable relationships. He faced constant rejection by an industry that had worshipped him as a teenager but turned its back on him as he aged. In the 2000s, Cassidy became more open about his mental health struggles. He spoke publicly about his bipolar disorder and the depression he had lived with for decades. He fought to manage his addiction, but the years of untreated mental illness and substance abuse had taken their toll. In November 2017, David Cassidy died from liver and kidney failure related to complications from chronic alcoholism and depression. He was 67 years old. His death was a reminder of the long-term consequences of untreated mental illness. 17. Marcia Cross. Marcia Cross appeared on multiple television shows, including Melrose Place and Desperate Housewives. She was a talented and respected actress, but Cross battled severe anxiety throughout her career. She has spoken openly about her struggle with obsessive-compulsive disorder and panic attacks. For years, she kept these struggles private, afraid of how the industry would treat her if they knew. The pressure to maintain her image and her career while battling anxiety was immense. She experienced panic attacks on set. She struggled to sleep. She developed elaborate coping mechanisms that took up hours of her day. In recent years, Cross has become an advocate for mental health awareness, speaking publicly about her anxiety disorder. While she is still alive, her journey highlights the prevalence of mental health struggles among television actors and the impact of keeping these battles secret. 18. Ted Knight. Ted Knight played Ted Baxter on The Mary Tyler Moore Show, a role that made him famous. He later starred in Too Close for Comfort. But Knight battled depression throughout his life. He struggled with the pressure of maintaining his image as a comedy actor. The typecasting limited his career opportunities. By the 1980s, Knight was diagnosed with cancer. The disease spread rapidly. As his physical health declined, his depression deepened. He withdrew from public life. The stress of dealing with cancer and depression took a severe toll on his mental health. In August 1986, at age 62, Ted Knight died from cancer. His depression and the weight of his illness had made his final years increasingly difficult. Those close to him said the combination of physical illness and mental health struggles had been devastating. 19. Norman Fell. Norman Fell played Stanley Roper on Three's Company. His cantankerous character was beloved, providing the perfect foil to the younger character's antics. But Fell battled depression throughout his career. He struggled with the ups and downs of show business. He dealt with financial insecurity despite his television success. By the late 1990s, Fell was diagnosed with cancer. The disease spread to his bones. The physical pain combined with his depression created a downward spiral. He became increasingly isolated. In December 1998, at age 74, Norman Fell died from cancer. His depression and the isolation that came with his final illness had made his last years extremely difficult. 20. Bonnie Franklin. Bonnie Franklin played Anne Romano on One Day at a Time, a role that made her a star. The show dealt with serious issues, and Franklin gave powerful performances. But Franklin battled depression and anxiety throughout her life. She struggled with the pressure of being a female lead in a male-dominated industry. She faced ageism and discrimination as she got older. By the 2000s, Franklin was diagnosed with cancer. The disease spread to her pancreas. Her depression deepened as her physical health declined. She became increasingly withdrawn. In March 2013, at age 69, Bonnie Franklin died from cancer. Her depression and the isolation that came with her final illness had been severe. Those close to her said her mental health struggles had intensified during her final years. Are the stories of 20 sitcom stars whose mental health struggles remained largely hidden until tragedy struck. But there are lessons we can learn from their deaths. Recognizing mental illness is the first step toward getting help. If you or someone you know is struggling with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, or any other mental health condition, Here are some important steps to take. First, recognize that mental illness is a real medical condition, not a personal failing or weakness. The stigma surrounding mental health has contributed to countless preventable deaths. When you notice signs of depression in yourself or others, take them seriously. Persistent sadness, loss of interest in activities you once enjoyed, changes in sleep patterns, appetite changes, difficulty concentrating, or thoughts of suicide are all warning signs that require professional attention. Don't wait. Don't hope it will pass on its own. Reach out for help. Talk to a doctor. Call a mental health crisis line. Text a crisis hotline. There are resources available 24/7. If someone you care about is showing signs of depression or suicidal ideation, approach them with compassion and without judgment. Let them know you care. Listen to them. Don't minimize their pain. Don't tell them to just think positive or get over it. Depression doesn't work that way. Encourage them to seek professional help. Offer to help them make an appointment. Go with them if they'll allow it. The entertainment industry in particular needs to do better at supporting the mental health of its performers. There should be mandatory mental health support for actors in successful shows. There should be transition programs to help child actors adjust to life after their shows end. There should be destigmatization of mental illness within the industry. But until those systemic changes happen, individuals need to take responsibility for their own mental health and for supporting those around them. The 20 actors we discussed today are gone. Their battles with mental illness ended in tragedy, but their stories can save lives. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. Most importantly, if you're struggling, reach out. Your life matters. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 988. Call or text anytime. You're not alone.